Good afternoon, my dear students, respected guardians and my viewers. Today, we are going to discuss on the major events of movement. In previous classes, we had gone through the various purposes and as well as what are the reasons the peoples revolted against the anarchy, and finally that revolution increased day by day because of the political consciousness and because of the various reasons. Yesterday we discussed about the reasons, political parties and the democratic follow all over the world, decolonizations and so on. And major events of movement 2007 means how finally Nepali people got democracy and the Rana reign was finally finished. That major events of movement, first Bergania conference that was held in 11 and 12 Assos 2007. Okay, Bergania conference. It is the place which is located in India. Nepali Congress was held this conference, and in that conference, the final planning was made to remove or to dethrone the Rana reign, and especially how to mobilize the liberation army, how to attack the all places shift by shift, and by mobilizing the various leaders how to attack on that. So that planning was done by the Nepali Congress, and that conference was declared the mass movement, that is armed mass movement. Okay, that is armed mass movement. Mass movement where the many people will take part, yes, where the many people will take part, but the mass movement was with the arms and weapons. By using arms and weapons, the movement will take place. That was the final touch for the by the liberation army to dethrone the anarchy, and this armed mass movement was planned to start on 21 Kartik. And when the mass movement was started on 21 Kartik 2007, on the same day, that movement was started, and the King Tirubhuvan also support that movement, and Tirubhuvan left the palace and went to the so that also another support for the movement. On 21 Kartik, that mass movement was started. When the Tirubhuvan left the palace and went to the Indian embassy, okay, Tirubhuvan went to the Indian embassy, and the Tirubhuvan flew to Delhi by the Indian plane on 23 Kartik. Okay, that plane was sent by the Indian government to pick up the Tirubhuvan and his family to the Delhi. So by that ways, 11 and 12 Assos, that mass movement, that was the Bergania conference was held in India, and on 21 Kartik the mass movement was started, and the King Tirubhuvan left the palace and went to the Indian embassy, and on 23 Kartik India sent a plane to pick up the Tirubhuvan family. Finally on 23 Kartik Tirubhuvan flew to India or Delhi. So that is the Bergania conference, and mass movement was starting. So for this on simple terms, as usual, I would like to remind you students, while teaching and learning, that will be effective. When that will be effective? When students know about the all date, reality and fact. Okay, in the same way, in previous time also I had taught you for this remembrance of this date, very easy students, 11 and 12, if you know the 11 and 12, in a same that 12, okay, 12 you write 2 and 1, okay, adversely. After that, if here is Assos, here is the Kartik, easily you can remember, yes, 1 and 2 you here write 2 and 1 of the next month. Okay, after that 2 and 1 is here, and only plus 2 is here. Okay, 21 and gap is 2, so 23. Only that 3 dates you can remember easily: 11, 12, 21 and 23, and 21 was and 2 1 2 and 2 1 and 2 3. By that words you can remember easily. When the Tribhuvan flew to Delhi, all the mass movement was taken place, especially led by the B.P. Koirala, Suvarna Shamsher, Dr. K.I. Singh and many others revolutionary leader was detailed for the east, west, north and various ways that liberation army was mobilized. Many peoples got martyrdom in that time. Many peoples became the martyrs, but they started to attack different places day by day. Local places, some Jhapa, Birganj and main success also got in Bhairahwa, and various ways they started to capture the place. Tribhuvan was not here, number 1. Number 2, Tribhuvan left to the Delhi, left the India and went to the Delhi. Okay, and so king was not in a country. In that time, all the attacks was started by the liberation army. Day by day, they were getting the success. The Mohan Shamsher mobilized the army. Okay, but that army and the suppressions rules of the Mohan Shamsher was out of control, and in that time Mohan Shamsher declared the Gyanendra as a king. Only Gyanendra was there, so that Mohan Shamsher declared the Gyanendra was a king. But international arena and from the international and others country, no one support Gyanendra as a king. Even India also not accepted the King Gyanendra, so that more pressures was built up to the Mohan Shamsher, number 1. Number 2, all the areas captured by the liberation army, and they started their own reigns. They started to run the local government, you can say. All the local areas were captured by the liberation army day by day. Finally, Rana became centralized in only Kathmandu Valley, and the liberation army and the Nepali peoples declared that they will not pay the tax. When they will not pay the tax, in that time another problem also arises in a country. So that sort of situation was built up in a country. So the situation became totally uncontrolled in a country by the Prime Minister's Rana reign. That situation was unable to tackle, unable to handle, unable to deal or unable to control. So that Mohan Shamsher request to the Delhi government is arbitrations, request for the arbitrations. Please, I would like to go through the you can say by bilateral talking or any talking materials through the table talk. I would like to control the situation of the country. I would like to go through the peace purpose or peace ways. That request was sent to the Mohan Shamsher to the Delhi. Finally, that sort of situation was created. So Mohan Shamsher was compelled to do this. Okay, students. So that because of these situations, there is the environment of an agreement. Okay, and that agreement was done in New Delhi, India, and in our history it is called the Delhi Agreement, and it is called the major events of that time. Okay, major events of movement of 2007 is called this. All the matters just I told you, that is called the major events. And finally Delhi Agreement was taken place on 1st Falgun. Delhi Agreement was taken place on 1st Falgun 2007. Okay. Now students, what was Delhi Agreement? We will discuss on the what was Delhi Agreement. First of all, Delhi Agreement, simple terms, the agreement was done in a Delhi, so it is called the Delhi Agreement, number 1. Number 2, it is called the Tripartite Agreement also. The agreement done in Delhi with between the 3 groups. Okay, between the 3 party, you can say. 3 party means Nepali Congress, Rana, and as well as the Indian government. By that 3 parties, the agreement was done. 3 means 3, and party means groups. Three groups had done the agreement in the New Delhi. So it is called the three-party agreement also, as well as sometimes it is called the three-party agreement also, and sometimes it is called the Delhi agreement also. And the agreement has taken place on 1st Falgun. That you have to know at the exam point of view. The question may ask you in a 1 marks question, so please memorize the date, okay, and as well as very simple, what is Delhi agreement or what is three-party agreement. Now, what were the main provisions of Delhi agreement? What were the main provisions? If there was the agreement, something written, peoples were put up their sign, and only by putting the sign and coming on the final decision, okay. So there were some points, that is we call the agreements points, or you can say provisions. There are the 5 points for the Delhi agreement, okay students. In a Delhi agreement, first, very simple point, the country was without constitution. There was not good governance, not a rule of law, and all the rules was when persons were supreme than the rules. So in that time, for a country, what was the requirement? Requirement was to draft the constitutions, because our country was without constitutions. So first provisions of the Delhi agreement means agreement is to draft the constitution. So what requires? Constituent assembly elections required. What requires? Constituent assembly elections. Constituent assembly elections is required. So constituent assembly election, assembly election, and to draft the new constitutions. That was the first Delhi agreement, to draft the constitution. To draft the constitution, constituent assembly election will be held. That was the first provision of Delhi agreement. Remember students, in that time, in that provisions, we will discuss later also, but just for your information I would like to share that constituent assembly election will be held and to draft the constitution. That was the first Delhi agreement. But our country able to do the constituent elections and to draft the constitutions only in 2072. That is also one. And another number 2. Number 2 is to make the government. What sort of government, students? Interim coalition government. Interim coalition government. Delhi agreement, point number 2, interim coalition government. Interim means, what is interim government? In a Nepali we can say antrim also. Interim government means that sort of government which has not a full power but have a some specific objectives. That sort of government is called interim government. And coalition government means that the government with the different groups or different parties, हामी नेपालीमा यसलाई मिलिजुली सरकार भन्छौं है. So coalition government, why it is called coalition government? Because that government was formed between 5 members from the Rana and 5 members from the Nepali Congress. That was mentioned in the Delhi agreement. Interim coalition government, which will be the 10 members, 5 members from the Rana and 5 members from the Nepali Congress, and premiership or premiership or prime minister. Who will be the prime ministers? Prime ministers will be from the Rana and prime minister will be the Mohan Shamsher. Mohan Shamsher was the last prime minister of the Ranarchy, and after the Ranarchy also, when the country declared the democracy, even though that first prime minister was the Mohan Shamsher himself. So that was the interim coalition government in having the 10 members, including 5 from the Rana and 5 from the Nepali Congress. Point number 3. What is the point number 3? Point number 3 is, all you know that after the Kot Parva, Bhandarkhal Parva and Alau Parva, and when the King Rajendra was imprisoned, King Surendra became the king of Nepal became the Surendra Vikram Saha. And during the reign of Surendra Vikram Saha, all the power taken by the Janga Bahadur as a Siritin Maharaj. What? As a Siritin Maharaj. When the all power was taken by the Rana Prime Minister as a Siritin Maharaj, that all the power of the Siritin Maharaj handed to the King Tirubhuvan. Handed to the King Tirubhuvan, and King Tirubhuvan would be the legitimate king of the country. Point number 3 is clear. All the power of the Siritin Maharaj was given to the King Tirubhuvan, and King Tirubhuvan would be the legitimate king of the country. That was the point number 3. And point number 4. In point number 4, all the political prisoners should be released except the criminal cases. All the political prisoners should be released except the criminal cases. Point number 4. Students, you are clear or not? Political prisoners means all the persons who were against the anarchy from the previous times also, as well as from the Liberation Army also. Many peoples were imprisoned who were against the anarchy. In that times, when the declarations of the Delhi Agreement was done, on that Delhi Agreement, what was the point number 4? All the political prisoners should be released, because all they were opposing to Rana, not by their personal benefit, but to establish the democracy in a country, so that political prisoners should be released. Yes, and when they will be released, but that sort of prisoners will remain who were illegally involved in some other criminal activities, that they will not be remain there. Okay. Another is agitator. Agitators have to deposit. Agitators have to deposit their weapons and stop the movements. Stop the movements. Point number 5. Agitators means who were the opposite to the Rana, who have taken part to the armed revolutions or armed movement. They have to deposit their weapons to the government, and they have to stop the movement. That was the 5th point. All these points are the major provisions of the Delhi Agreement. Students, while teaching, that you have to know the some sequence, so that you can easily remember that 5 points. Point number 1, what is there? Main thing, our country was without constitution, so that we have to draft the constitution. To draft the constitutions, constituent assembly elections was required, so that 2 provisions was set in point number 1. Is it clear to all students? And point number 2, what is? When to draft the constitution and to do the election, what required? Government is required. When the requirement of the government cannot be full power government in that time, because that is a temporary government to draft the constitution and to do the elections only. That sort of government is required. So it is called the interim government, and government should be from the both parties, either from the Rana or from the Rana and Nepali Congress, not from the both parties, so that it is called interim coalition government. Why the Tirubhuvan is supporting that Nepali Congress and all the people's movement? Because he king also not getting his right. So he was also trying to regain his right. So he was also being the part of the revolution, so that obviously to regain his power, which was started by his ancestors. So King Tirubhuvan will get the power which that was performed or got by the Rana by the Sritin post. That was also another point. Another, when the peoples were taken parts, many peoples were imprisoned by the Rana or by the recent government, so they should be released. And another, when there is the agreement that obviously we have to stop the movement. To stop the movement, weapons cannot keep by the person, so that the weapons should be deposited to the government. By that ways, 5 major provisions of the Delhi agreements are, I just explained you. I think you are well known about this. And after that, when this agreement was taken place on which date? 1st Falgun 2007. After this agreement, 4th Falgun 2007, King Tirubhuvan returned to the country, and when after that, on 7th Falgun 2007, King Tirubhuvan declared the democracy in a country. So students, all we know, every year a 7th Falgun we are celebrating as a democracy day. And from the Rana and from the Nepali Congress, 5 ministers were made, that already I told you. Now I have written the name. Students, I would like to remind you, many examinations and many question papers, I have seen that the name also asked. In previous exam also I have seen the questions, write a minister name from the Nepali Congress after the you can say in a interim coalition government after 2007 BS. So please you have to know the name. You have to go through the name. Mohan Shamsher from the Rana became the Prime Minister of the country. Babar Shamsher, Defense Minister of the country. Chudaraj Sharma, Forest Minister. And Nirpajang Rana, Education Minister. Yagya Bahadur Basnet, Health Minister. All these were the 5 ministers from the Rana. And students, you can see Yagya Bahadur Basnet was not a Rana, even though he became the ministers, because he was selected by the Mohan Shamsher. From the Congress, Visheshwar Prasad Koirala, we can say BP Koirala was the Home Minister. Subarna Shamsher was the Finance Minister. You can see here Subarna Shamsher was also the Rana, but he became the side of Congress because he was totally opposite to the Rana. Already we discussed about the group A, B and C. So Subarna Shamsher became the strong opposed towards the Ranarchy, and Subarna Shamsher became the Finance Minister. Ganesh Man Singh, Industry and Commerce. Bhadrakali Mishra, Transport Minister, and as well as Bharat Mani Sharma, Food and Agriculture Ministers. By that ways, 10 names I have written here, 5 ministers from the Rana and 5 ministers from the Nepali Congress. By that ways, we completed the major events of the movement. How finally Nepal or Nepali people got the democracy. That thing just we discussed. We started our discussions from the Ashos, and it was ended on Falgun. By that ways, the 104 years Ranarchy was finally ended in our country and democracy was established. Now, students, all you understood, I think. After this, we will discuss on the consequences of the revolutions. Okay. In previous time or previous classes, we discussed about the causes of the revolutions. Now we are talking about the consequences. Why peoples are revolting, that is called causes. When the revolution was ended, what we had expecting, that things when we expect and when we got, that is called the consequences of the revolutions. Okay. Number 1, I have written here, students, that is foundation of democratic practice. Democratic practice. What is democratic practice? What is democracy? All you know about the democracy. Normally we are teaching and you are also reading again and again, democracy for the people, of the people, by the people. All the government was totally handed by the people's representations. So democratic practice means, what is democratic practice? Where there is the competitions, where there is the opportunities, where there is the chances, all they can take part. They have the power to make the government. There is the clear and open comparisons. Who can win? Yes, by the majority. That can get the job also. Okay, there that can get the government also. By the majority means when we are appearing for the exam, by the majority means getting more marks. But when we are going through the elections, by the majority means we are getting more votes. Democratic practice means where there is the equality, where there is the similarities, where there is the opportunities, where there is the inclusive, proportionate involvements or people's participations. Everything comes under the democratic practice. So in 2007, Falgun 7, our country got the democracy. Number 2, increase in public awareness. Increase in public awareness. What is public awareness? Public awareness means we know about the own situation, present situation and past situation. How was that? What is the country situation? What is the world situations? That we know. What is our human rights? What is our fundamental rights? What is my duty and what is my rights? What are the rights? What is moral duty? What is legal duty? When we know, when we can get the knowledge, when we are educated, when we have the freedom, when we are acquiring or getting the various rights, only we can be a public aware. When our public will be aware, only the country can be development. It is the one of the base for the development. Public awareness, it is connected with the educations, it is connected with the opportunities and so on. So that increase in public awareness also increase because people started to get the various rights and duties, as well as they are getting the employment opportunities and they are getting the education facilities. Okay. Another is beginning of constitutional process. Beginning of constitutional process. In 1910 also already we discussed, first Muluki N was published during the time of Janga Bahadur Rana. Even though that was limited and that was on that there was various discrimination was there. So finally we cannot say that because of that Muluki N the government was not formed as well. So our country was needed the constitution. Remember students, in 2004 when Padma Shamsher was the prime minister, he in that time also the constitution 2004 was drafted, but it was unable to implement it. Padma Shamsher unable to implement on it. So in our history, sometime you have seen the nickname of the Padma Shamsher is a Runche Pradhan Mantri bhanera pani हामी Padma Shamsherलाई चिन्छौं. He has written, not he has, in this time the constitution was written but unable to implement on the ground. Okay. So finally Interim Government Act of Nepal 2007 BS, Interim Government Act of Nepal 2007 BS was promulgated and was implemented. So beginning of the constitutional process, and it is the it was the second constitutions in our country. Another is Nepal's exposure in international arena. Nepal exposure in international arena. Previous time during the Ranarchy, only our relation was up to only England, or you can say East India Company or Britishers. After the democratic country, when the country was became the part of non-aligned movement, and our country got the membership of UNO, and our country also well known by the various countries. Our bilateral relations were increased day by day. So Nepal's exposure in the international arena, non-aligned movement. Okay, in previous classes you had gone through the non-aligned movement. What actually non-aligned movement was? Okay, just I am taking 1 minute for that. Non-aligned movement. especially Indian Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru and many other Prime Ministers has taken initiations. Okay, and in 1968 from the Belgrade conference that non-aligned movement was became very popular, and our country also became the non-aligned movement. After the Second World War, the world has been divided into two groups. Okay, that is called Cold War, and two groups. One was led by the America is a capitalist mode, and another was led by the Russia as a socialist mode. So that in future there may be another war also can be created by the socialist mode and capitalist mode. Okay, one was leading by the Warsaw group, it is called the USSR, and one was led by the NATO group, it is called the leading by the America, you can say. So in that time some country decided that we will not support the both world, either first or second. Okay, we will not support the American groups also, and we will not support the USSR group also. We will remain non-aligned. I am not your also, I am not your also. We always need the peace. That sort of countries becomes the group, and that sort of situation created and started and maintained. Finally, we became the non-aligned movement members also. That much information I would like to share with you. Point number 5, people's participations. Previous times there was very less or non-participant by the peoples because there was no power, there was no opportunity, there was no chance, there was no job, there was no education, and there was only extreme exploitation. Now when democracy is there, people started to take part in politics, people started to go to the study, people started to get somehow jobs, people started the various human rights and fundamental rights. So people's participations increased day by day, and it was the very good for our country progress. By that ways, that much result we got after the revolution, and it is called the consequences of the revolution. And 104 years anarchy was ended, and we entered in the democratic process, and we can say new process, and it is a great social and political change in our country. By that ways, today I would like to stop this class, and next day again we will go continue. Thank you being with me. Have a good day. Sir,